Hey guys,
Hello.
Hello.
where's Anthony?
Yeah, he wasn't responding to the Facebook group either.
Oh yeah, no, he said he wasn't working, so he was on the message chat.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay, hopefully he sees. There it is. He's coming. All right, there he is.
So how many podcasters does it take to do a live show?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think we'll.
Is this on? Is this on? Is this working?
It's on.
Yeah.
It's
We got
on.
you. You know what? We really need sound effects for this podcast.
I know.
You know, like they used to have on radio, the guy with the two coconuts clapping them together for hoof beats and a helicopter.
I mean, I could add him in later, but that's not as much fun as just hitting a button and having it happen right then and there.
Yeah.
Oh well, whatever. We tried. We failed. So how's everybody? How was everybody's holiday?
Not
Let's
too
not
bad.
all talk at once.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that bad, huh?
Hasn't been too bad at all, actually. I've been, had family visiting. I've had, lots of food. We've had floods. We've had
Floods,
heat
yeah.
waves. We've had everything.
Australia does
Excitement.
everything to 11, man. You're like Spinal Tap's amps.
Do you know? Here's a bit of trivia for you. There was an episode of Peppa Pig that was created to teach kids not to be scared of spiders because spiders are good things, which they banned in Australia because it's actually not good to actually teach kids not to be afraid of spiders.
Okay,
There are a lot of things in Australia that can kill you,
that's
Yes.
true.
and there are a lot of things that want to kill you.
But we're saying this, yet we've got our own, alligator man that walks amongst the alligators taking pictures with his little Mamiya U.
Yeah.
Yeah, or his iPhone.
You've
You know, I'm not sure. I think it might have been the drugs that were involved in that particular scenario.
I don't know. I've been doing that for decades. You know, you just got to learn when it's cool enough that they're going to be sluggish.
That's that's right. I keep forgetting they in the summertime they move relatively quickly, but
you heat
yeah,
them up, they move faster.
yeah,
Well, in the winter they need to eat, and so they feast in the morning. But to digest, they can't like be in the water because the water's kind of cold. So they come out on the shore and they just lay there digesting. So they've already had their like big meal for the day. So it's not like like during breeding season, like during the spring when they are like all jumped up with hormones and super active all the time. And then you have to give them like a fairly wide berth. But in the winter, they're relatively safe. I mean, you don't want to touch them. I mean, you don't want to brush up against them.
But what if one wants dessert?
Yeah, well, I mean, that happens.
Just
Well, haven't I heard-
imagine.
Haven't I heard stories of like frozen iguanas falling out of trees and then people
yeah.
pick them up and throw them in their car, not
Oh.
realizing that when they thaw out, they're gonna like ravage you?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a guy that was running a barbecue down in Miami, and he thought he just had like free meat for a month. And so he just filled his car with like dozens of frozen iguanas and got on the highway and then turned his heater on and they all thawed at once and he ended up crashing his car because he had, and I mean, because the iguanas, I mean, they don't bite you. They're just, 4 foot of like just one thrashing muscle.
One thrashing muscle with like Indiana Jones whip like tail,
Yeah,
I mean,
iguanas are harmless, but you don't want to be in a
you don't want
car.
to piss them off in a car, right?
Well,
It was
their
like-
nails wouldn't be not sharp either.
No.
So, you might get a few gashes here and
They
there.
might get scratched up, but I mean, they're not going for the jugular.
Mm.
Before we get started, let me just say that I'm not sure how long I'm going to last tonight. I took my evening meds. One of them causes my lungs to kind of fill up with fluids, and so I start coughing. So if I start to fade, I'm just gonna have to fade away.
okay.
All right.
Well, we know where you are.
Yeah.
Just send us a message later and let us know how you're doing.
Is it worth telling the listeners why because we
I've got
mentioned Anthony on drugs and we mentioned we're talking about medication now, it's probably worth mentioning why.
Yeah, I mean, is this actually going to be part of the show? What we're doing right now? I mean, have we
Yeah,
started?
I'm not gonna edit any of this out. This is still gonna be live.
Okay.
Unless you want me to remove it.
No. It's just
Okay.
I mean, for the listeners that I don't know personally, when I came back from my Japan trip, almost immediately the day after I came back, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and it's been a rough road.
Yeah.
So I'm in the middle of
Yeah.
chemo. Went in today and did all of the positioning scans for my radiation therapy, which will begin next week. So it's started my prostate, spread to my bones, spread to my lymph system, a little bit in my lungs. I'm cautiously optimistic that the treatments that we have will be successful. I've been, if you can be lucky and having stage 4 cancer, I don't have any issues with any organs right now. So, it hasn't spread to my colon or my bladder or any of the organs that have a fairly high mortality rate. But it's something that I'll probably need to be, I'll be in treatments for the rest of my life. But cautiously optimistic that after, the chemotherapy part is going to be intense for the next 4 months.
Yeah.
And when I get the treatments, I am pretty much knocked out for the first 7 to 10 days after the infusions. Issues that I'm having now is that I have a number of different therapies that I'm going through in addition to the chemo. So like I was 1 week after my initial chemo, this last session, I had to go back in for monoclonal antibody injections to try to redistribute calcium onto my hip bones where the cancer is set in.
You've
So-
shared us with this news, it's a couple weeks old. So for Theo, Paul, and I, this isn't new to hear, but it's not any easier, to hear it. So I'm just sorry that this is happening to you, but stay optimistic. I mean, that's from what I've heard, positive thoughts it goes a long way.
Well, for me, it's a lifelong obsession with Monty Python. Pretty much everything I've learned on how to cope with this came from Monty Python's Meaning of Life, and a little bit of Life of Brian.
Yeah.
And a little bit of the Bring Out the Dead, I'm Not Dead Yet skit from the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
So I'm moving through the different levels of acceptance of what I'm going through. I'm trying to keep a good dark sense of humor about it. It hasn't hit me in a way that has just completely derailed me, but it derails me in chunks.
Sure.
So there are days when I have good days and days when I have bad days, and I just have to learn how to modulate that.
Yeah.
Look,
That has
you're
cut into
tough.
my shooting though. And I'm glad I went to Japan without knowing that I had this, although I was aware that I probably did. But just coming back, it's been hard to even just pick up a camera.
Yeah.
It reprioritizes things, doesn't it? But mate, you're a tough cookie. I'll tell you, I'll give you that much. You're really a tough cookie. You're taking it on the chin and you're fighting back hard. So that's fantastic to see.
So positive thoughts. I know it's cliche, the thoughts and prayers kind of thing, but I know there's a lot of listeners that have been listening to this show since the beginning. Each episode, we're getting between 2,000 to 3,000 listens in the first couple of weeks. So for most of the people, this will be the first time hearing it. Anthony missed the last episode and he's dropped out early. This is why. It was something that we figured we would share at some point, but he's going to keep sticking with us and we're going to keep going. Wish you the best, man. I mean, just stick with it. If sending more cameras would help you, we'll do it,
Cameras or film, whatever we
Film.
got that
Yeah.
keep you moving. And
So-
is Theo drinking a beer?
I am. It just as we started, it clicked over 12 o'clock. So it's afternoon here. So I
Nice.
have a beer.
Okay.
And
Well,
I'm
you
not
know,
working at the moment.
Yeah. So we normally record on Monday in the United States, but it's always Tuesday in the middle of the workday for Theo. But this is Friday night for us, so it's Saturday for him. Obviously, so it's New Year. No, it's the day before New Year's Eve. I can't even.
Yeah.
I've been on vacation since the 19th of December. Spent 5 days up in Michigan with my father-in-law. So I'm at that stretch where like days I can't keep track of what day of the week it is, what number it is. People have to remind me what I'm doing that day. So been enjoying the time off.
I finished off my last contract early November. For people that don't know, I freelance, and I've got something lined up in the new year. This was finished a little bit earlier than I expected, so I've been off work since early November now, and you think you losing track of days happens when you come off at the 19th of December, mate,
It's
try
true.
this for a couple of
Yeah.
months. So,
I, you
but
know, I don't want to go through that, but I wouldn't, I won't deny that there's a little bit of jealousy to like the thought of having that much time of not having to work could be
yeah,
fun.
yeah. Look, it's good now that I've got something lined up for the new year. I start my new a new role, and I'm really excited about this one. Actually, it's a really something I'm quite excited
Yeah.
about, and it means now that the pressure's off, making sure I've got something lined off, and I have literally, what is it, 23 days now of just enjoying myself because I don't have to try and do anything work-wise.
Yeah.
I'm just good. Christmas is over. I've done all that bit. So now it's a matter of, making sure I don't go over to the edge and put on all the weight I lost last year and go out and enjoy. Do some photography.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, how is that Nikon S2?
That S2, I think we mentioned it in the last.
We
I think we
did.
mentioned it in the last episode.
I don't think you had it yet though.
No, but it arrived. It is right here. As you can see there, I did post it. I'm still getting likes for this post from early December, in the groups. But this S2, it came with a 1.4 Nikkor lens, is immaculate.
Yeah.
This is the cleanest camera I have ever bought. And that's saying something because I've got some, out of box stuff. Or maybe the Mamiya 7 was cleaner, but we know that that's the best camera anyway. But it has been a lot of fun shooting this. I've got my first roll of film through. I've Anthony rightly pointed out that I seem to got my colors wrong or something on my editing. And yes, my screen for some reason the calibration's gone out, and that's where I got to in the end. But once I got sorted that out, this thing is fantastic. It is a lot of fun. It shoots well. It is nice to use. Probably I'm still in the Leica M2 camp as being my preferred camera to this, but it is so well made. It's definitely in the same league.
Well, so let me ask you this then. Your gut reaction when you first started playing with it, how much does it compare to a Contax in your opinion? Because so many people say, "Oh, well, it was just a copy." But what are your thoughts on
I've
that?
never shot a Contax. I've shot
You haven't? Okay.
a Kia 4, which obviously this blows it out of the water.
Yeah.
But I look, if the one thing I did notice with the Kia 4 was the same thing that people complain about with the Contax is you keep covering the rangefinder with your finger unless you start using the Contax claw.
But not
With
on the
this,
Nikon.
not on
Right.
the Nikon. They thought about this, and it is a lot more natural to
Right.
hold. I've the one thing I'd probably say I could prefer is if the shutter button was maybe a little bit more forward.
Yeah.
I find it a little bit too far back for my liking. But apart from that, I mean, it winds beautifully. It just it feels nice just to sort of even just click it and shoot it. So.
Well, as somebody who's never shot any Nikon rangefinders, but has shot plenty of contacts, my question would be is how much is it like shooting a Nikon F? Like if you put like a waist level finder on a Nikon F, would you be like 2/3 of the way to the S2?
No, I think this is a lot more refined. I find this is a lot more refined compared to the Nikon F. The F2 probably gets a little bit closer, but it just feels smoother. It just feels like it's got quality pieces on there. I find that the F, though quality camera, it's still they probably went into much larger production numbers, so they probably automated more or used less materials or something. I don't know, but this just feels heavier, more solid.
Yeah.
And I love rangefinders, so that's probably a bit of an
Well,
unfair comparison.
I mean, I'll extrapolate that for you, Anthony, and say that obviously there's a difference between a rangefinder and an SLR with the moving mirror.
Sure.
The F was minus the mirror box 90% an SP. So the S2 predates the SP, but they're both very smooth. There's just something different about the SNC of a rangefinder versus the ka-chunk of a SLR,
Yeah.
right? And while the F is a very good camera, it's well built. I mean, nobody needs me to commend it because
But
it's
aren't the controls in the same place?
yeah, they're very similar, very similar.
Hmm.
I mean, they, like I said, they literally took the body of the SP, stretched it by a couple millimeters, added in a mirror box, and that's essentially, and a prism. And that's essentially the Nikon F compared to the SP.
I think you've
but
actually said this before that even the shutter release is too far back on the F, and they've
Yep.
corrected that on the F2. I think
That's-
it was you that said that, Mike.
It is. I've said that multiple times that's one of the reasons I 100% prefer the F2 over the original F is because in the F2 they moved it forward. And it's one of those things where people probably go, come on, really? Like he's actually complaining about the location of the shutter release, but it's not until you hold it. There's just something about where the shutter release is on the Nikon rangefinders and the F where it's not quite where your finger wants to be. Like in my mind, when I do my reviews, I always have that chart at the top, and there's one I give a scale of 0, 1, or 2 points for ergonomics. And for my criteria, a camera that has a 2, which is the highest score I can give in that area, a 2 for ergonomics. When I pick it up, my hands should naturally grab it where it needs to be grabbed, and my fingers should naturally fall where they need to be to function properly.
Like a medalist.
Okay. Yeah. But in the night, and again, it's hard for me to say this because I love the Nikon rangefinders. I love the S2. It is a great camera, Theo. But you've already detected my one. I wish this was better, and that's one thing that like the Nikkos, and the later Japanese screw mount rangefinders corrected is they moved the shutter release forward. So when you grab it, your right hand, your right index finger just naturally falls where that shutter release is. And it's not a big difference, but it's when you have a camera that's that good and that smooth and that nice, that when you have to go down the list of potential things to complain about, a shutter release being slightly too far back is about the only thing that I really could say that's I don't love about that camera. But
we're going to need to put a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. It says that if you are considering a Nikon S2 or if you own a Nikon S2, do not listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Because it's going to ruin your experience with the camera for the rest of your life.
And I don't want to do that, but that it's true. I mean, Theo, you noticed it too.
But to taking all that in, I absolutely love shooting it.
Yeah, I do too.
It is a lot of fun. I reckon, Anthony, you would, especially if you enjoy shooting your contacts. I think you would absolutely love shooting this camera.
Right.
So,
well, I love shooting the F too. I love the contacts. I love the F. I probably would.
You would
love
that.
Hopefully one of these days I'll get a chance to. By the way, was that a Greek camera strap on your Nikon?
Not quite. It's blue, but it's not quite Greek.
But no, isn't it made in Greece?
Oh, yes, it is. You're right. The Hyperion straps.
Yeah.
I always buy the Hyperion straps.
My favorite cheap camera straps.
Oh, they are fantastic. I mean,
they are.
I've got a Vitessa L here with another one, and I've got I've even got a Pen F here with one on there.
Yeah, no, I have like a shoebox full of them, and whenever I pull out a new camera, that I just go right. I prefer those. They're very well made and comfortable and affordable.
It's probably too late for the listeners now, but if you're thinking of buying a photographer some presents, the Hyperion straps always do go well.
And they're like $18.
I don't always put a strap on my camera, but when I do, I use Hyperion straps.
And you can get them on Etsy in the U.S., which is convenient. I don't know that they sell direct in the U.S., but they
do. Yeah.
Do they? They have a website?
Yeah. And you can do custom orders with different colors of wrap with different colors of cord. And they actually have some nice leather straps too. I've got their braided strap, and I've got one of the flat straps, leather, and they're extremely nice.
And for me, it's a bonus that it's Greek.
There you go. Well, I wonder if they have a Camerosity yellow and red version.
They do. You can ask one, they'll do it.
You absolutely could do that.
All right. Well, we'll have to have a partnership.
Yeah,
One of these
sure,
days
good
we'll have
idea.
swag. One day. All right. So Theo
Actually,
loves his
we mentioned
S2.
just before we move off the contacts,
Yeah.
Anthony, I've got something I'm going to send you. I'm not sure if you've got this, but this is a guide from
Oh,
the
look at that.
1950s of the contact. Now, I don't have a contact, so it's a bit useless and lost on me, but I know you
I've
should
never
like
seen that
seeing.
one.
Yeah, it's from Focal Press. From the best I can actually work out, it's from the 1950s, early 1950s. It talks about the different contacts, cameras, like that.
Oh, very cool.
Now, the only downside to this is I bought this when I was living in London. Now, when you live in London, your mailbox is your front door,
Ah, yes.
because we get so I was starting to collect a few bits and pieces around cameras around then when I was living in London, and we got our dog. It's the first time I've owned a dog. Now, puppy dog and things coming through the mail don't work really well. So the last couple of pages are in this envelope here.
But make
But
sure you individually put those in a Ziploc bag for when it gets on the side of the road near Anthony's house.
that's right. We have history there in terms of how things get delivered to Anthony from Australia. But I thought you might enjoy this, considering you like your contacts cameras.
Absolutely.
Kurt, another Kurt thing. Kurt had an entire box of those focal press guides. I mean, it was like he has duplicates upon duplicates upon duplicates of some of the same ones. It's like I didn't even know this, but they made focal guides for like the Olympus Auto Eye, like one-off models. I have one for a Paraflex. They've made them for like the Argus C4. It's amazing the degree of how many, what the variety was that they made those guides for. And they're pretty neat. They're like, it's not quite an instruction manual. It's like a little bit of tips and tricks, a little bit about the accessories. Like I could see, I assume, Paul, by the time you had your own store, they probably weren't being printed anymore, but
No.
I could picture like one of those wire racks that spins. Probably you had a whole bunch of them in there for the different models or something like that.
Yeah, there were some Hove took over from Focal
Okay.
Press.
Yeah. Like you'd always see those, like, what year were you born in? And then they'd go down, they'd have all the different years or greeting cards or focal guides. But that's cool. That's a
And,
neat.
Speaking of books,
so go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was going to say, Mike had like 10 boxes of books.
Oh my God.
from Kurt's
I was there
collection.
today.
How you doing with that?
There's some of the books are really neat. I mean, I have duplicates of Bob Rotoloni's books. I want to get him to actually sign one because he did give me one of his books that was for somebody else. So it's like dedicated to somebody else, but I want to get Kurt's book actually autographed by Robert. And I mean, I have Wes Loder's book, I have Peter Kitchyman's book, I have multiple McCown's guides. And those are just the ones that I know. I mean, there's so many neat books that I just don't know what to do with. I mean, I don't want to throw them away, but I don't even know that they're worth anything to try and sell,
McEwen's. I need a McEwen's.
You need a McEwen's? I have a couple of them, but I don't know. I mean, if you want them, I could send them to you, but for one, they're heavy, so shipping would be high. But if you've never seen a McEwen's, it's literally just a price guide. Like you're not, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't want to like down talk them because I know a lot of people love those books and I don't want to take away from what Jim McEwen's done. But for people like me that likes researching the history, it's really not that useful for that because each model, there's maybe a sentence or two.
Yeah, but
That's fine, but it gives you that list. That's what I'm after.
well,
it's
the thing that I like about it is that it helps me identify
a
model when there are a lot of models.
Yeah.
Although I will say that, I've got the McCown's Kodak specific guide because they broke out a couple of different models, and it's not the most accurate source of information in the world.
Well, and keep in mind, in his defense, they haven't printed one since what, 2008 or 9 or something like that. So a lot of the research that guy did on the versions that are out there, or early 1.0 internet websites and researching by word of mouth. So I do believe that there, like you said, Anthony, there's a lot of misinformation in there. But for the time, that was the Bible. That was what you had. I mean, there wasn't a better option. There wasn't a camera wiki. or collectablend. Not that I have a lot of value in that either, but there wasn't the repository of information that's out there like there is today.
So
But,
Mike, from a used bookstore in Jacksonville, I came up with a book that I challenge you to find this among Kurt's books.
okay.
It is the Captain, L. Ron Hubbard's Writing with Light.
Oh boy.
And it is insane. It is the most pompous. It's L. Ron Hubbard, master photographer, talking
Isn't
through
he
his
the
collection.
Scientology guy?
Yeah, he's the founder of Scientology. And this is actually
Vacuums.
published. This is published by the Scientology Press to like impress upon you what an incredible expert L. Ron Hubbard is. And it's the most pompous 1950s style collector user. I am the master of photography book. It's kind of humorous, but it's also kind of terrifying because we have a very similar collection. It's like I'm looking through them like, ooh, L. Ron, we share a lot of taste here.
Tom Cruise is going to show up at your house and borrow some of your cameras.
He's got like an entire section on like Voigtlander ephemera and here's my Bessa 2 that is the captain of 6x9 photography. Yeah, you have to like read it in like an exaggerated L. Ron Hubbard voice. But yeah, it's one of the, I guess it's ironic as a bit of pop cultural ephemera, but yeah, it's just I'll put a photo of it, just a picture of L. Ron posing with his Graflex on the front, and you can tell he's in a lab coat and in his white tie and his black shirt, and he's very, very serious about his photography.
Not that it's exactly the same, but there was a guy in the 70s named Jerome Katz that did a couple books about the one of them he did was on the Cardin, the premier instrument Cardin, which was the American Leica. And he's done another one about I'm drawing a blank, but the designer that did the Kodak Bantam Special and the Extra and the Medalist. But this guy,
Teague.
No, Teague was the designer. It was the guy who designed the mechanics of it.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I'm drawing a blank on it. But the Jerome Katz book, Dan Hausman let me borrow it. And it's been out of print for many, many years. And the information the guy has in there is very, very good. But he is like what you were describing, as like uses every adjective in the dictionary to describe how much of a genius and a patriot. And of course, nobody could ever hope to have built this camera except the genius of Peter Cardin. Harman Kardon, like Today Audio. It's the same linealogy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the Cardin was designed by Peter Cardin. And basically, when you couldn't get Leicas from Germany anymore, the U.S. military still wanted them because they were good cameras. So they went to Ernst Lights of New York, which there was a New York factory at the time. And they said, can you build us Leicas? And they're like, no, we can't do it. We can only make like small parts. It's too difficult to make them. So the U.S. government went to Kodak and said, can you make a Leica? And Kodak's like, no, we can't do it. They were working on the Extra at the time anyway. Well, Premier Instrument Corp ended up being the ones that answered the call. And this book goes so far above and beyond about how much of a patriot this guy was. And reading this book, it's like, I don't know. It's humorous in the praise that it gives the guy who made it. But if you can find one, they're very interesting. The Cardin's a cool camera. The book is pretty hard to find. Like I said, it was written in 75. But the guy who wrote it, like, actually had firsthand contact. So, there's some information in there that doesn't exist anywhere else. But yeah, when you read some of those books that get a little bit embellished on the facts, it's kind of funny to read.
Well, it's like I'm sitting there looking at the table of contents for L. Ron Hubbard here, and he's got the Rolleiflex collection, the St. Hill Darkroom, My Letter to Professor Land.
What you should have done better.
The Linhof, the Nikonos, the Voigtlander, the Rolly 35, the Mamiya C33, and then it's like cameras of the photo shoot organization, the Lisbon Maritime Museum, the Minox, the Minolta CLE. And then he's got a whole section here on his Leica collection. And it closes with a quote, "I won't take a photograph of anybody or photographs for anybody unless I feel it will do them some good."
Oh my God.
Oh boy.
Now, when was this written about? Would you guess?
This is L. Ron Hubbard. That's L. Ron. That's
No. What? When?
Oh, when was this written? Good God.
80s?
I would say 80s.
Yeah. I'll have to look for that one.
Funny. Let's see here. Oh,
I see what you mean about being scary on similar camera collections
I know.
because that kind of goes down my line as well. And it's because of you I've got the Zeiss and the Voigtlander collections going so heavily at the moment now, Anthony.
Actually, this was 99. So
oh wow,
Elron was dead by then.
Yeah.
I noticed he didn't mention the King Regula.
I know.
Or the Mamiya 7.
Big blind spot in Scientology, you know.
The Moonies. The King Regula was the camera of the Moonies.
So I had a story that I had meant to share a couple episodes ago, and we got sidetracked. It's nothing major, but it just made me laugh. We talk about some of the characters that come out at the camera shows, and I went to Abe Vinegar's Photorama twice in a row. He had a September show in Chicago and then another one in November, and I was able to offload a bunch of stuff. But at both shows, I just loaded up a bunch of boxes with stuff, mostly from Kurt's collection, and I had it. I had to have been one of the lowest priced people at that show. I mean, sometimes you go to these camera shows and some of these guys are selling things for eBay plus prices, but I had stuff 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks. So I had a whole table of TLRs, and this guy, I honestly don't know the dude's name. Even if I did, I don't want to share it. But he ended up buying a mint condition Minolta autocord from me in the box. Cosmetics 9.5 out of 10, but it did have that problem that's very common to autocords where the focus arm kind of becomes detached. It wasn't broken. Some of them actually will crack. This one, the arm was intact. It just felt like it become detached under there. So it's gonna need some work. Now, a mint condition in the box Minolta autocord, Paul, what? 150, 200? You're muted.
Yeah, 150 bucks.
150. So I had it for 50. And I was very clear. I'm like, it works fine. I'm in the shutter fire. The lenses were clear. The leather wasn't peeling. I was just like, the only problem you have here is this arm. So this guy buys it from me for 50 bucks. Then he comes back like 20 minutes later and says, I just showed this to somebody else. It was Tony Campos, but this has nothing to do with Tony. I have no ill will to Tony. He's a great guy. But he's like, yeah, you need to get that fixed. It might be broken. You know, you're going to have to tear her thing apart. The guy's like, I don't want to have to deal with that. He goes, can I trade this for something else? I was like, sure, whatever. Just give back to me. You know, it was only 20 minutes later. I was like, I was very clear to you. I told you this needs to be fixed, but now you don't want to get it fixed. Fine, whatever. So he ends up getting an Ansco automatic reflex 3.5, which is what, another $150 camera, would you say usually? Yeah. Okay. So 50 bucks. This one was fine. I mean, it was a little stiff. It wasn't quite a 10 out of 10. I'd say maybe an 8 out of 10, few scuffs here and there, but overall in great shape. And it didn't, in my opinion, it worked. Okay. So he took it home. I leave. So this was the September show. So the November show, I'm there again. This same guy walks up. He goes, I bought this from you. It doesn't work. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, for one, you already swapped out. You're getting these things for 50 bucks. I'm like, if you're not happy with it, list it on eBay. You'll get 100 for it, you know? And he like wanted me to swap them out with something else. And at that time, I just didn't have any $50 TLRs. So I had to kind of put my foot down and be like, I'm not giving you your money back. Sorry, dude. You know, you already are still ahead on this $50 Ansco automatic reflex. But overall, I'd say the experiences I had with the buyers were great. And I think most people realize that when someone's there selling stuff for below value, even if it's not perfect, you don't go back and complain about it. So
see, that's the advantage to eBay. On eBay, you can block buyers.
Yeah.
At camera shows, you can't do that.
No.
I just sold a Leica 50 millimeter APO Summicron, which is a $5,000 lens. And it was a 12-year-old lens, but it had never been used. I mean, it was just new in the box. And so I shipped it to this guy, and he 10 minutes after he gets, I get a call from him. He says, this lens has terrible haze. And I said, well, that's interesting because I checked it very carefully. I didn't see any haze. So he sends it back, which is fine. I mean, I expect to get returns. So it came back. It was like $4,500. And I get it, and the lens is perfect. There is a filter on it, a B plus W filter that had a smudge on the outside of the filter. That's what he was seeing. So he leaves me feedback, and he says, good seller, but I had to return he left me neutral feedback.
Okay.
He says, a good seller who took the lens back, but it had really serious haze. And I rarely, I mean, I don't get negative or neutral feedback. Very, very rare. So I responded to him and I said, no haze. It was a dirty free filter that was on the lens. I relisted and resold it to a happy buyer. And then I blocked him.
Yeah.
So he's done. But there's another funny one. I got to tell this. A couple of days ago, I sold a 100-2.8 lens for the Exacta, for the top core. It was a top core, a 100-2.8 to a guy in New Zealand. And so it had a problem. The hood that was with it was not the right hood. So we were messaging back and forth and we were getting along great. Everything was just perfect. And he says, can I ask you about another question, an odd camera that I'm thinking about buying that I can't find anybody that's ever tried one? I said, sure, what is it? He says, a Plaubel 69W. And I said, I have one of those. And he says, wait a minute. Who is this? And I said, this is Paul from Camerosity. He says, I thought it was. He's one of our listeners. It turns out he's a great guy. We messaged for about an hour, and now he said, what else do you have in your store that I might be interested in?
Do you really introduce yourself as Paul from the Camerosity podcast?
You know, it's funny. When I worked for 30 some years, I never told anyone my last name. I was Paul from either Click Camera or Paul from Fairborn Camera. No one knew my last name. So now when I wind up on eBay, my eBay store doesn't have my last name on it either. It's Paul Chris. So they still don't, a lot of people don't know my last name, but a lot of people do know me now through this podcast.
So Paul, did you mention when he asked if you had any other cameras to mention, did you mention the Rollei SL66X?
I did mention that, as a matter of fact. And another one of our listeners is thinking about that one too.
I've been trying to flog that, man. That is, of all the cameras that I shot this last year, I've been lucky in that there have been several purchases that Paul has made from estates down in Florida where I've sort of been able to act as an intermediary, and it's given me the chance to film test these cameras before they go to Paul to make sure that they're in good order. And of all the cameras that I shot, I think in the last 3 years, that SL66X was by far my favorite camera that I've shot. I mean, if I had the cash, I'd just buy it outright because somebody's missing it. Somebody's missing the boat on that camera because I'm a person who dislikes shooting Hasselblad. I don't have any problem with shooting 6x6. I mean, I'm shooting a Rolleiflex right now as a project camera, but as that form factor goes, maybe it's because I have 8 years of experience with my Rolleiflex. The SL66, just the way the controls fit in your hands, where the buttons are, the layout, sort of like what Theo's talking about and what Mike's talking about with ergonomics. And I pick up that camera and it's just really easy for me to use.
Sometimes it's the littlest thing makes the difference. And when you hit that perfect balance of ergonomics, it's like transcendental, and how your opinion is of a camera when it just
that
fits
camera
you.
Too, it's so cool because it's a focal plane shutter, and the helical is built into the lens. Or into the body. It's a bellows. So if you have a set of extension tubes, you can take basically any lens ever made and mount it to an extension tube and use it on that camera.
And you can flip the lenses to make them every lens into a macro.
Yeah, I mean
they all have mounting. They have the lens mount on both sides of the lens so that you can flip it around. And it's one of the few cameras that, like my wife Janet, she sees me using a lot of cameras and she sees everything I shoot. It's one of the few cameras that I've shot with where she would look at the camera or look at the photo, the end result, and go, that looks better than the other cameras that you're using. There's something about that camera that's just really magical. and somebody's going to be very lucky to pick that up off of you at some point.
So say which one it is again.
It's the Rolleiflex SL66X.
What is the X?
It was a limited edition from, there's not a lot of information about these cameras out online. But from what you've read, it sounds like it was a custom order camera. They only made a few dozen a year, and it was designed for studio flash sync.
Okay.
Paul can talk more about it than I can, but it's got like TTL flash metering with a certain light setup in the studio.
Yeah, they made 250 of them. And when they replaced it, it was replaced with the SL66 SE, which did have more electronics. And we all know what that means when you put.
This is a fully manual camera. I mean, it's
fully manual.
It's like a 500 cm.
It's the SCA flash sync system that Metz had, because it's German camera.
It's nothing that I would ever use myself, but the fact is, they were custom cameras. They were like hand built versions of that camera. And people talk about those being an unreliable camera. Man, I had no problems working with that camera, and I put probably 10 rolls of film through it.
No, it was a very trouble-free camera. I mean, I sold them new at a certain point. The SL66 was on the market for a long time.
Yeah, it was. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it started in about 1965, I think, or even maybe a little earlier than that.
That was one camera Kurt did not have. I don't recall seeing a single one of those.
No.
What about, wasn't there a 35 millimeter SLR, like the 8008 or something like that they made?
A little box it's a boxy little thing.
6008.
6000.
Battery issues are knocking those out now.
Okay, so they're not very good.
From what I've heard from people I know that have them, you pretty much have to have the battery packs rebuilt.
Well, and not only that, they had a 35 millimeter interchangeable back, and the film traveled vertically, as I recall.
Yeah.
So it was a very strange system. I actually sold one of those, and the guy that bought it just absolutely hated it.
Yeah, a friend of mine was going to lend me his. I thought it was like a 2000 or something like that, rather than that.
It was
numbering.
a 2000.
There was a 2000, yeah. And it looked like a beautiful camera. I've seen him use it a couple of times, but it died. What you just said, it died before he had a chance to lend it out to me, which I'm, obviously a little, less upset than he is. But it's something I never got a chance to shoot with.
So speaking of cameras that have died, I'm at a crossroads for this one, but this is my most recent gas. I got out Contax N1. It's really difficult to find this camera body with a lens. It's one of those the Japanese sellers love to separate. So I had to purchase the body and lens from two different sellers. The lens is the Vario Sonar 2485 3.5 to 4.5. So it's a zoom. Not a huge one, but I mean, it's got I don't know, I guess it's the 72 millimeter front filters. It's a pretty big lens, metal mount. But the Kyocera, who was making Yashica at the time, was making the Contax, the S2, the RTSs and such like that. But the N's were the first one to support in-body autofocus. So they call it the N mount. So they actually changed. They went away from the Contax CY mount, which was all the manual focus bodies. You have the Aria, right, Anthony, and the S2. You love those cameras.
No, I've got the ST. And the ST was the bigger version of the Aria. The Aria was their quote unquote women's camera. It was a smaller scale camera, compact. The ST was kind of like an alternative or replacement to the RTS.
Yeah. So here, I'll show you real quick for size. I mean, this one has the extended grip. So here's a Nikon F5 and here's the Contax. So the Contax isn't quite as tall, but I guess it's not going to show up too good. Thickness front to back, they're about the same. Side to side, width-wise, they're about the same. The F5 just is bigger because it has the battery grip, which the Contax does not have. But this thing's a beast, and there's so much to like about it. But I have really terrible luck with Contax SLRs because I was talking about this in the Discord. Kyle Liu had made a post about Contax SLRs, and this one has this fault where it keeps saying E, 4 E's on the LCD. And this is the most strangest electrical gremlin that I've ever heard, because now that I know about it, and I didn't know this before I bought the body, but it's very common. Almost half of these cameras have this. The Contax 645 has the exact same problem. So whatever electronic gremlin is in this camera happens to the other ones from the same era. It happens after exactly 5 shots. Doesn't matter what mode you're in. You could be in program mode. You can be in aperture priority mode, shutter priority mode. You could even be in manual mode with one exception. I'll get to a second. But you take the battery out, which is really easy. You just kind of flick the battery release, pull it out about 1 millimeter, just so the contacts, it loses contact with the battery. Put it back in, of course, popped out. And then the message goes away. And then you can shoot exactly 5 shots again. You could shoot them. I've tried like 5 really quick back to back. I've tried a shot, wait a minute, a shot, wait a minute. It does not matter what order or what setting you use. On the 6th shot, it always fails with one exception. And I found this online. I'm like, no way. If you set it to manual mode and set the shutter to 1/8000th of a second, which is the fastest it goes, then you can fire it all day long. So whatever EEPROM, firmware, whatever fault this camera has, ignores the fault if you're at the fastest shutter speed mode, but only in manual mode. But literally any other setting, you get 5 shots, error. Pop the battery out, pop it back in, boom, you get 5 more. Other than that, it seems to work okay.
Have you thought about contacting Nippon Photo Clinic in New York City?
I did. I already emailed them, and they have failed to. They have not responded to me yet.
Really? Oh, it's probably because of the holidays. They worked on both of my cameras. They're really good, and I actually I got to show up and like visit their space in person.
Okay,
and they were incredibly gracious, and it's a very cool shop.
Right. When I searched online for the possibility of repairing this, they were the only one that ever came up with Nippon in New York. So I did email them, and you're right, it was right before the holidays. So I sent it on December 20th. So I'm still hoping that they do get back to me, but I want to see if I can get it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I could try that. But I mean, I paid less for the body than the lens. So I'm not that deep into it. And it's almost like, I think I like this thing so much that I'm just willing to accept having to pop the battery out every 6th shot to just keep using it. Cause otherwise it works great. I mean, the viewfinder is awesome.
Slows you down.
Say that again. Oh yeah. It slows me down.
Slows you down.
And, speaking about what we were just talking about, the ergonomics, I mean, without even having to think about it, when you grab this, the shutter release just naturally falls in that front spot. And we talked about on the Praktina, the East German episode, about how Praktina's always had that front kind of angled shutter release. Well, this is angled similarly to like how most modern like DSLRs are, but it's kind of at an angle right up front there. And it just sort of naturally falls where your fingers are. So the ergonomics, it has a thumb grip in the back. The finger grip is just, everything about it is just really nice. And I love using the camera. It just sucks that, if I knew that it's never going to get any worse than this, I wouldn't even think about it. But it's like, I just know that at some point it's probably just going to die completely. But
I'm loath to send you any cameras because I know that you have a gazillion cameras right now. But if you want, I'll send you my ST, which has been fully serviced by Nippon.
Okay.
It's one of my, it is absolutely my favorite modern SLR. I love my S2, which is the full manual one, but the ST is the automated one.
Well, I made the comment a few minutes ago, but my bad luck with contacts is because a couple years ago, I wrote about this on my site. I got an RTS3, which was extremely high end. It was probably the most advanced manual focus SLR ever made. It even beats the Canon T90 in terms of what this thing can do, but it's still a manual focus camera. And everything on the camera worked except the film advance. For some reason, no matter what I did, it would not advance the film. I mean, I would shove the leader in. I would try different angles. I tried taking scissors and cutting different shapes into the leaders, just thinking maybe somehow I could cut it to the right shape and somehow it would grab it. But nothing would happen, and it would just stay on 0. And the shutter would fire all day long. Everything seemed to be working, but then you pop open the film door and the leader's just sitting there. It just would not grab it. So I ended up getting rid of that camera too. So I'm 0 for 2 in high-end Contax SLRs, but when you hold them,
I can send you the ST and the S2.
Yeah.
The S2 is like a Nikon FM2, 100% manual. So you have to cock it, you have to rewind it. The ST has the automatic film advance, automatic rewind. So it's like a fashion camera.
Okay.
As fast as you can pull the trigger.
This thing's nice. And I mean, it's heavy though. I mean, it's definitely this is not a zoo camera. This hanging from your neck a long day at the zoo would definitely get tiresome. But for short stints, what I've been shooting it in is the weather's been miserable up here lately. I don't think we've seen the sun in over 3 weeks. But I was up in northern Michigan for Christmas, and I took it out with me there and just put it in full auto mode and just let it fire away. Nailing exposure in every shot. So it's great for that. If I were to, not that I do a lot of concert photography, but if I were to go see a show, I'd be willing to bet it'd be great for those situations as well. But yeah,
I also need to send you all the Super Eye contests.
Okay. I would be interested in the contacts only. And the only reason I say it that way is I have so many roll film cameras that I'm never going to get to. I want to, I absolutely do. I have one of the Ensign Commandos that Theo had serviced by Jess. I got one of those too, and I'm really excited to try and use it. But I am finding motivation this year, especially in the last 6 months, to be at an all-time low for me. And when I do shoot, it ends up being cameras like this because I can just put in a roll of film and just not have to think about it. I am falling victim to like fully automatic cameras. So the point and shoot episode we just did had a lot of interesting things for me that I've enjoyed shooting lately.
Speaking about enjoying shooting lately, I am also supremely jealous of Paul because Paul has a camera that I have coveted that I'll probably never even hold in my life.
Yeah.
That
Same.
he has been testing around Yellow Springs. If you've seen Paul on the streets in Yellow Springs with a very wide angle Voigtlander lens, Paul, why don't you tell us about what you've been shooting?
A Leica M10 monochrome, which Dan Tamarkin on one of the podcasts got me thinking about because Dan really liked it. And I've had a couple M10s and an M11, got an M11 from Kurt. And I never really cared much about them, but the M10 monochrome it's a black and white only camera, and they took a lot of the crap out of the optical path over the sensor, so there's no filters or anything. The quality of the image is just unbelievable, and it doesn't matter what ISO you use. There's no grain. I mean, it's just the dynamic range on it's just unbelievable. So I wound up buying a 100-foot roll of the Orwo UN 54. And now I got to try to flog that off on somebody because I know I'm never going to shoot it. Anthony, did you raise your hand?
I was, we had an internal chat about this. I think I've got like 1,500 feet of film in my bulk rollers right now. So but man, that UN 54 that was such a screaming deal that you found. It's a discontinued film. It's a film that Lomo repackaged. I don't remember if it was Potsdam or Berlin, but it's the 100 ISO cinefilm in the Berlin series of Lomo. It is one of my absolute favorite films of the last 20 years. And it's out of production. When the new management took over at Orvo, they discontinued all their black and white films. So the price that you got that roll at, I really want to, but man, I just bought 300 feet of Eastman Vision 3 films, including another 100 feet of double X. I've got 400 feet of that XT left.
You got a lot of film.
I've got so many hundreds of feet of film that I just can't imagine needing that film, but I covet that film.
Hey, has anybody ever shot the Kodak BW400CN, the C41 chromogenic?
I have. I did back in the day when it was out.
I shot a 20-year-old roll of it, and it didn't age well.
You sent me a 10-pack of it, Paul.
Oh, okay. But I have 2 more rolls if anybody wants it.
Well, Anthony hit the nail on the head. It doesn't age well. Even though it develops as in C41 chemicals as a black and white film, all the ones that I've shot had heavy base fog. It's still viable. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can still get images from it, but they're like I've spoken before, I'm not a huge fan of extremely high contrast black and white films. That's why I like Panatomic X so much, because I love the shadow detail. But when you shoot, especially a black and white film where there's a lot of base fog, if you try and visualize in your head contrast, your peaks and your lows. When you have base fog, you're essentially crushing the contrast. And there's a lot we can do today with good scanning. I believe we can get way better results out of expired film than the old mini labs ever could back in the day. But there's just something about the images just look flat on it.
Yeah.
So unless you have a source of what's it called again? 400 CN?
BWCN.
Okay,
so it's the same film, basically, same style of film that Ilford XP2.
Yeah, exactly. Now the XP2 I've had much better luck with.
Yeah, it's just a chromogenic film. It's a color negative film that prints black and white.
They made those
on the Kodak. Actually, had better results like developing it in Xtol than developing it in C41.
Interesting. I've never tried that. I should
They
try.
Didn't have to use a bleach. That's interesting.
Yeah. I had the opposite problem. I recently did a batch. The way I develop film, I don't do it as instantly as like you do, Anthony. I just wait till I get a pile of stuff to do. And I tend to pick and choose the black and white more frequently because it's just, I can get through it faster. But I did a recent batch of black and white film, and I don't know what the hell I did, but I somehow threw in a roll of Fuji 400 color, some Superia in there, and I developed it in HC 110, and I was impressed actually. Like, there's decent contrast. The images look pretty good. Developing a C41 color film in HC 110, so I'm gonna have to try some of that Kodak, the black and white chromogenic film in HC 110 and see if I can maybe get better results than doing it the way it's supposed to be done. But if you do find that film, it's neat. One thing, actually a cool thing you can do, and granted you could do this in Photoshop, but if you don't want to do it in Photoshop and you want to get it the authentic way, you do the chromogenic films, develop it as a black and white image using C41 chems, and then scan it as a color film, even though it's a color film with black and white images, and you'll get kind of a neat bluish, almost like a cyanotype kind of hue to the black and white images, which I don't know, I thought looked kind of neat. Like I said, I guess you could probably add that with a filter in Photoshop, but you can get it the real way.
I suppose the other benefit of scanning that as a color photo is being a C41 type film, you can actually do the dust and scratch removal.
That's
on
true
your
too.
Scanner, because
the ice
normally on black and white films you can't do that.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, no, I mean you'll get good images out of them. I just think that it's at that point where unless it's been truly freezer stored, it's not holding up as well. It's like finding old Kodak Gold 200 and 400. I'm to the point where when I find that, I don't even waste my time anymore. You could still get images out of it, but it's so lackluster. The color shifts are so extreme. The contrast is crushed on them that I no longer enjoy shooting really expired color films anymore. And I think that
if you put them in a Lomo LCA though, you can actually get some interesting results, which are fun. But keep in mind, that's exactly what you're getting is fun. It's not, you're not going to get ideal shooting results.
I'm obsessive about expired film. I mean, my favorite film of all time is this 500-foot roll of Eastman 5220 XT that I picked up. It's from 1966, and I can get amazing, like it looks just like Panatomic X that I can get out of that film. But I have a stash that somebody gave me of Portra 400 from the mid 2000s. And boy, and it's been freezer stored. I mean, it came out of his freezer and into my freezer, and I cannot get a good roll of film. It's both 220 and 120, and I cannot get I mean, I might get, even shooting it at like 150 or 200, I can get okay color and decent images out of it, but they'll all have damage. It's just a film that has not aged well at all.
The only Portra film that I've had really good luck with expired is 800. I've shot a number of Portra 800 rolls, and usually in 120, and I've gotten great results from those. So I don't know if I just got lucky to have a batch that was stored well, but I agree with you. Portra is not a survivor.
160 VC tends to do a little bit better than a lot of the other.
That's true too. The VC is far less common than the NC. The VC is vivid. I did shoot a couple VCs before, and I did get good images from those as well. You're right, Theo. Just it's harder to find.
Yeah. I was lucky. I was given a truckload of it by a friend. I'm almost
Oh, that's
registered with
cool.
it now. So,
We'll
but
use.
yeah, he didn't need it anymore, so he just gave it to me. I've been working my way through it, which has been quite handy.
There was a film that Agfa made, a color film called Agfa Ultra 100, and that was a fantastic color film.
I hated that.
Really? The
Yeah.
Ultra, it was super vibrant. I figured it was their response to Ektar 100, but I've shot a couple rolls of like it's hard to find, but the Agfa Ultra 100 I really liked. So that's interesting you didn't care for it.
I just got some terrible browns out of that camera.
Really?
Yeah, so
Maybe
You know,
because
I shot it. I shot
Mm.
my. I actually took a brick of it to Greece. I was on an expedition to document the wreck of the Britannic, and we were stuck on this island called Kia in the Aegean Sea. And I shot that Agfa film, and going back and like rescanning those negatives after 23 years, shocked at how vibrant and cool looking
yeah,
it is.
that
I wish that I had bought more of it when I had the chance. You know, it was just one of those things where I saw it at a good price and picked it up to go with me on this trip.
mhm.
I don't think I ever shot it again. Um,
You can find it, but it's hard. It's
but
very
boy,
hard to
I
find.
I do love that film.
There you go.
So
Maybe I'm the exception here. Now, Mike, I've got a question for you.
yeah,
How good are you at walking on your toes?
not very good at all. I
So
have
how
no
do you get
coordination.
around in that room of yours? Because I've been
No,
noticing you picking up cameras off the
no,
floor
you guys aren't
constantly
gonna.
through it.
You guys aren't gonna. I have so many.
Oh wow, that's a lot cleaner than it was last time I saw it.
Mike, your audio went away. You unplugged your audio.
Mike, you lost your audio.
Now he's on mute.
That's what I get for moving stuff.
Oh, that's a lot cleaner than what it was last time I saw
No,
a picture of it.
that was one of my projects for Christmas is to at least get the floor to where I could move around. I had to build, you can see right here on my hand this is a new shelf. That's mostly stuff from Kurt, and a lot of it it's not even so much that I kept a ton, it's just the stuff I knew I wanted to keep. I had nowhere to put it, so I had to get a place to put it so that I could get that stuff out of the way. And then once I was able to do that, then I was able to start getting through a little bit quicker some of their stuff. So are we at a show and tell spot now here? Or?
Yeah.
So a couple things. I showed this camera once before, the LC wide. We talked about this. It shoots half frame, full frame, and square. But then I found that. I don't think I've ever showed you guys this before. This is the souvenir case for the LC wide. And let me open this thing up for you guys. It comes in this wooden crate, Lomo compact LC wide. And I mean, this box is huge for such a tiny camera. But when you open it up, I mean, I'll give Lomo one thing is that they do presentation very well. And, you know, they have all this neat, like the camera's actually in this cardboard box. But what I think is really clever, here, let me just take it down here. They give you a color negative film. It looks like a Matryoshka doll, like one of those Russian nesting dolls. This is the sample film. I've never seen this film before. I don't know if they ever sold it separately, but it comes with a book, a hardcover book. That's super cool. I don't know that it's worth the money that these things go for, but I mean, it comes with a hardcover book showing you, and it's a couple hundred pages. They're not numbered, but I'd guess at least 150, 200 pages maybe, you know, of all just, you know, shots that people have done with the LC wide. So the presentation is very impressive. And, you know, for what's, you know, we all know the story. The LCA was a cheap camera. I mean, it was just meant to be shot from the hip with little regard for composition, not a whole lot of manual control. But people ended up falling in love with that camera for the spontaneity and the distinct looks that it gave. But then they made the wide version. You get it with, there's actually two books in here. Here's the other book. It comes in the box. And this is more, I don't know, I
But
guess
isn't it a story of two cameras though? Because the original LCA from the Soviet era was a cheap and cheerful camera.
Right.
The lomography one though, I thought was sold at a premium, and the wide was even another level above that.
It is. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not any better in terms of build quality, I think, than the Soviet cameras one, other than it's just newer. It hasn't suffered the rigors of time quite as bad as the original ones had. But
have you shot with it?
I haven't. I haven't even had a chance to really.
Oh, do mate. It is a lot of fun. I did, and I wrote about it, and I really enjoyed it. It is a camera that you don't have to think much. You're talking about zoo cameras. There you go. That's a perfect example of something to take and have a bit of fun with.
Presentation on this is, I mean, so I opened up the box within a box, and even the tissue paper. It's like this could be wallpaper. It's got the Lomo logo on it, LCA. It kind of alternates between blue and red, and has some Soviet like buildings on it and stuff. But here you go. There's another one of the cameras, and how they presented this. I got to give a lot of credit to whoever did this, because they charge a premium, but at least I could say they're giving you a decent amount for your money, in terms of if you're a collector and you want to keep that kind of stuff.
Did you end up with the LCA version of the 120 camera?
Yes.
That's another one that I've always wanted to shoot.
Well, I will send this to you, Anthony.
Oh my gosh.
Here it is.
Another
right here.
box.
It's not as amazingly packaged. There is a book in here too, though. So I'll take this thing out. I mean, it's essentially an LCA, but it shoots 120.
I've heard they're fantastic cameras.
They might be.
I mean, for what they are. Yeah,
but it comes with a hardcover book too. That's fairly thick in price. Showing, and it's high matte gloss paper. With a little bit of history. So I mean, this is actually kind of cool. Like, it tells you a little bit of the story of the camera, but it's mostly just sample images that people have shot. So yeah, this is a 6x6 camera. It's the Lomo version, or I'm sorry, the medium format version of the LCA. Very cool.
Well, Michael, as long as you're showing and telling, on the top shelf near the edge of the shelf behind you, right, you're pointing right at it. What is the dome port? That looks like an underwater housing. It looks actually it looks like a nice underwater housing.
This thing right here?
That thing right there.
No, that's the Fairchild K21 Auto Ektar. No,
oh wow, that looks like a dome port.
It's aerial camera. That's just
the Aero Ektar.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so big. It looks like a dome port from an underwater housing.
I think it was one of the episodes you dropped off on, but I was actually holding it. We had who's the military collector? Greg McCreesh was on, and we did a show and tell. Yeah, it's because you usually find those lenses already removed from the bodies, and I had one that had the lens in the camera, and I was like, it's so impractical. You can't even shoot it even if you wanted to, because those cameras were designed to be like hardwired into the electronics of a surveillance plane or something. So it's got it almost looks like, I don't know what they're called, but that the types of cords that microphones, like studio microphones, use, where it's like a
XLR.
circle.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called, but it almost looks like that's the type of power that it needs.
I bet you can hook it up to your Jetta.
Maybe, yeah. But I've had this actually. But here's like a gun camera. One of them, this would be on. I don't know what it would be on, but it shoots 16 millimeter images on a reel. Still,
that's a Bell and Howell, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's got a Wallensack lens.
Yeah, that's a Navy camera.
Navy camera. Yeah, I've never shot it, but those are my two military impracticals. But yeah, so here's Paul sent me this. Haven't had a chance to play with the auto spot, the Minolta auto spot meter. I like looking for the viewfinder on this thing. It's a circle.
Did you put batteries in it?
I haven't tried it yet. No.
It takes a 9-volt and a AA. And the way it works is when you push the trigger button, there's a wheel that spins.
Yeah, it's circular.
It's circular. It shows you the app-stop shutter speed combination.
I can see.
Is that like the Pentax one?
Well, this one's it's the same concept, but the fact that it's an analog dial, and part of it rotates inside the finder to show you the f-stop shutter speed combinations.
Oh wow!
Yeah, there's no way I can capture this.
Bert had 5 of those, and all 5 of them worked.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Neat. All right, so two
Wow.
more. I had seen this one before, so I knew it was in one of the boxes, and I thought I know what it is, but I just thought, what the hell? This is a Frank and Heideck Heidescope. So what this is it's a twin lens kind of TLR. This is the predecessor to the Rolleiflex. So it's got a waist level viewfinder, but it's a stereo camera. And I done a little bit of research. The two guys who formed that company both used to work for Fotlander. So in essence, they tried to convince Fotlander to build a twin lens reflex camera. They weren't interested in it. So these two guys left the company, formed their own company. I'm going to butcher the name, but Frank and Heideck, I'm sure in German it's pronounced differently. But they didn't have a lot of capital. So this is what they made. They made this from about 1923 until I think the very late 30s. But this was so successful that they were able to get enough capital and manufacturing and whatever to build the Rolleiflex. So the
That one's brand
Rolleiflex,
spanking new.
so this one not only is brand spanking new and works, but I kind of I've had this one for a while, but I set it aside. And it wasn't until today that I actually went to look up and figure it, because I know there's a ton of like variants of this, but this is a type 1. It doesn't use roll film. It shoots 47 by, I think, like off the top of my head, like 110 millimeter plates, stereo images. What I thought was really neat, I don't know if this is going to show, but the serial number, you can't see it, is at the top. It's serial number 777. So
Ooh.
for people who like strange serial numbers and low serial numbers, this has to be one of the very first ones ever made. Very, very nice shape. The shutter works fine on it. What I think is kind of cool, in addition to being full focusing stereo camera with a full selection of shutter speeds and aperture f-stops, but there's a knob on the bottom that does a rise. So you can actually do a rise where you can actually make the entire like lens assembly lift up. I don't know of any other stereo camera that can do that, where like the like on a Greyflex or something. So I thought that was kind of neat. When I saw the 777, I was like, all right, maybe it's a lucky camera. But then the last one, this one I'm actually going to use. I have the flash for it in the other room. This is called the Simon Brothers Omega 120. This is the predecessor of the Coney Rapid Omega. It uses the exact same film advance. You pull this lever out and push it back in. This is how you advance the film. So this shifts the film over. It shoots 6x7 images. It's got a coupled rangefinder. The viewfinder's on top. The lens cap folds down. When you focus it, it's focused with this big knob on the side, and the front lens standard goes forward and backwards. And it's just a real, I hate the term steampunk because I think a lot of things get that name that don't really deserve it. But this has a very strange appearance to it. But it's called the Simon Brothers Omega 120. So this is a 6x7 rangefinder.
Looks like something that's just been thrown together with
Yeah.
spare parts.
It was an American company, I think. Yeah, because it has a Wollensek lens, Wollensek shutter, Simon Brothers LIC in New York City, made in USA. So yeah, it's an American company, American camera. And who was the distributor, Paul, in New York that did Konica?
Berkey Marketing.
That's right. Yeah, Berkey had some. I don't remember the entireness of it, but they had some connection with Konica, and they ended up buying the remnants of this company and turned it into the Connie Rapid Omega, which were also 6x7 rangefinders with this. It's so for people who can't see, there's only 4 of us here, but there's like a handle on the side that you pull it straight out. It sounds like a shotgun almost. And what it's actually doing is there's a gear, like a serrated gear, that when you push it back in, it spins a shaft that actually advances the film. So each time you do this, you're moving the film one exposure.
Are you also cocking the shutter though?
Yeah, cocks the shutter.
Yeah, it does 2 things. That's the way the Rapids worked also.
I mean, I have a Rapid also. They work exactly the same, despite the cameras looking very different. Functionally, they're exactly the same. I'd say the only functional difference is the rangefinder is it's separate. It's like a Leica where you rangefinder through one window and then you move your eye up top to the actual main viewfinder window to compose. Whereas the Connie Rapid Omega, it's a combined coincident rangefinder. But other than that, it works pretty much the exact same way. Same kind of film, same exact exposures. The lever's really neat. I love how you focus it on the side. I think that's super cool.
That's really cool.
So,
Look, we've got some limited time here with Anthony, so I thought I'd throw in my question now. I have a question on what is the strangest camera each of us has actually shot with this year? And surprising probably is probably a better word. What's the most surprising camera that we've shot with this year? So, Anthony, let's start with you.
Well, I've kind of got the Alpha and the Omega, but unfortunately not the Omega that Mike just held up, which would be one of the strangest cameras that I've shot. For me, the Alpha is unexpectedly coming into the Zeiss Icon 10X, which is a camera that I've wanted to play with ever since Kurt Loder. It was Kurt, right? That not Kurt.
From Kurt's,
Mike,
yeah,
Michael
that was
Westcott.
Kurt's collection.
It was Kurt's collection, but it was Wes. Wes is the person that was obsessed with him, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Wes Loder.
Yeah. When Wes would talk about that camera, and I was like, how different is this going to be from other 1930s Zeiss cameras that I've shot? And the truth is, it's a lot different from any Zeiss camera that you ever shot. And in all honesty, if you were to pick up that camera, you would be kind of stunned to learn that it wasn't like a 1960s camera. Just because the way it functions, the way it shoots, the weird automations on it. It's a square format 35 millimeter, which is always going to be, a place in my heart for square format 35 millimeter. But that camera is just, it's like, I forget that it's an 80-year-old camera when I go to shoot it. You absolutely would not, there's just no way that you conceptualize that it's an 80-year-old camera. It's just, it's a spectacular camera.
Which lens did yours come with? Was it the sonar?
Yes. Yeah.
The sonar. Okay.
Sonar. And then of course the Omega would be the GX617, which was a part of a complicated trade with Paul, where I divested myself of every single bit of Leica gear that I had, and ended up with this behemoth of a panorama camera. Again, a very simple camera, a very, it's a full manual, very basic camera. But it's just so much fun to shoot. And the results are always just delightful. It's like, talk about surprise and delight every time I pick up that camera and shoot it. And I just can't wait to get the negatives developed, because you're just going to be just delighted with what you get. It's a really cool camera, and unlike anything else I've ever shot.
The results you've been posting on to show us on that is just spectacular.
Really good.
Mate. It's just absolutely amazing.
And Anthony, don't cut yourself short too, because I've spoken about this before on the panoramic episode, where when you shoot a panoramic camera, you do have to do a little bit of mental visualization to get the most out of a panoramic shot. You can't just walk around with a X-Pan or a wide lux or the 617 or whatever, or Horizon, and just randomly start shooting pictures, just stuff like you would a point and shoot, because you're not going to make full effect out of it. And I've seen some of the images you shared from that 617, and you have a good eye for it.
Thank you.
That helps a lot too, because I don't have it. And the few times I have shot wide panoramic cameras, I don't feel the magic from them like I've seen from your shot. So that's awesome that you've had that, it's had that effect on you.
Yeah, honestly, because I was just looking back at my stats for the year. I've shot those two cameras more than every other camera combined of the year.
What about you, Paul?
I've been so busy. I haven't shot a roll of film. I can't remember the last time I shot a roll of film. So I think, the thing that's got me excited about photography right now is that the Leica M10 monochrome. It's actually got me want to take pictures.
That's good.
Doesn't have to be film.
Right.
Well, today the last thing I need is a third system, because I've got the Fujis and the Sonys. But I also picked up my fourth M10R black paint camera, which were very, very rare. And with that Leica purchase I made, I wound up with 3 of them, and I sold all 3. And the same person actually had bought a 4th that just turned up. So I drove down near Louisville, Kentucky this morning and bought it. And I'm thinking about whether I want to keep it or not. It's easy to say it's just another digital camera, but it's actually a little bit more than that, because the form factor on the rangefinder is pretty good. And I've got, right now I would have 12 21, 28, 35, 50, and 90 millimeter lenses for it. So I'd have a nice kit.
That with a 21, I think would be an awesome
Yeah,
combo.
the 21 2.8 Alma Red M is a
Yeah.
real. And it's funny because I have the Leica finder that came from Kurt, but I have the Voigtlander or the TT Artisan 21 finder. I like better than the Leica finder. The exit pupil on it's bigger, so my eye fits better into it.
Yeah. I don't like the viewfinder that comes on the Hasselblad SWC, the
No, I
super
don't
wide.
like that at all.
The built-in viewfinder is terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's too small.
It's too small for how big of an image it is. And then what the location of the shoe on the body is kind of forward. So it's like you kind of have to contort your head to get close enough to the eyepiece over the top like surface of the camera to be able to see through it. It's not good.
I hate to be a broken record about this, but I do not understand Hasselblad ergonomics. It's just like it's the camera that's going to get the 0 score for me on the Ekman scale, because I've never met a Hasselblad that I like. I mean, I enjoyed shooting the SWC more than any other Hasselblad because I like the results, because that lens is spectacular and it's a fun camera to shoot, but it's not an enjoyable camera to shoot.
I feel the same way about the SWC. If your question earlier, Theo, was what's the camera you've been most disappointed in this year that you thought you would like, it's the SWC, because I love wide angle.
Wasn't, but we'll take that.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, I mean, I talked about the Hologon, which is an example of a camera built around a lens. I mean, essentially, the Hologon is a lens with a camera attached to it. And then the Biogon or whatever it was, I can't remember the name of the lens on it.
It's a Hologon, 15-8 Hologon.
No, on the SWC.
Oh, 38 millimeter Biogon.
Yeah, the Biogon 38 was built specifically with that body around it. It's essentially just a frame with there's no traditional shut. It's not a focal plane shutter. It still has removable backs, but that is just not a camera that's really endeared itself to me at all. So Theo, answering your own question.
Yeah, I've had a few interesting ones this year. In terms of when I want something quality, of course, it's the Mamiya. I mean, I know we say tongue in cheek a lot here, but it is a very optimal camera, the Mamiya Serra. So the quality is just outstanding. But the ones that have actually surprised me and sort of, I never thought I'd fall so into is the Leica R8 was a surprise to me. I thought there's no way I'm going to like this chunky thing, but it just works, and it's just spectacular in the way it works.
And Paul hates them.
Yes, I know.
He really talked bad of. No, he didn't.
No, I didn't. In fact, I have an R9 coming in within the next couple weeks, I think.
That's the Porsche design one, right? Didn't Porsche do the body on that? Or am I confused?
No, they're R8 and R9 are basically the same shape.
Yeah.
They're like a Knight exact.
But aren't they an SLR with like a strange? They don't look like the previous R bodies, though.
No, they don't. No, the R8 is where they break the mold. And
so it is the one
shaped like a
chunky body.
Yeah. So that wasn't a Porsche design. I thought it was.
No, that was the Rolly that we were talking about. The Rolly 35. Those were Porsche.
All right. I said I won't edit stuff. Maybe I'll edit my stupidity out there.
I fell heavily into the Super Contas this year, thanks to Anthony. So I really enjoyed shooting those, and the results I've been getting from those have been something I've really liked. And the same with the Superb. The Superb is a camera that surprised me because of the way it works and the way you actually hold it and you can see everything and so on. But the most surprising camera I've had shooting and the results from it, believe it or not, is the Plaubo Machina 6x9. Wow. I actually was not expecting, because I've read on those and people have sort of trashed the lenses on them a bit and so on. But I have actually been getting fantastic results. I love the form factor, the way it folds almost flat when you're hanging from your neck. It attracts a hell of a lot of attention for people. I've got the chrome version, so it really sort of stands out. And it just, I've got the roll back on it, so I don't have to deal with the actual,
I never know how to grip it though. I mean, it's the bellows is so exposed on those. Like, do you just grab the thumb compartment and hold it?
Pretty much.
It has tabs on it for your thumbs. It's got like little textured metal
Yeah.
tabs that fold out that you're supposed to hold it by.
Mine's got a leather holder for your hand too. My hands are probably a bit smaller than yours too, so it yeah, it fits quite nicely. But I think Anthony, you've shot with yours, haven't you?
I did. I had one on a long-term loan. I've since given it back, and it's a camera that I've sort of half kept my eye on the market because I'd love to replace it. I love those lenses. There's like a look to that camera that you get from those lenses. And I didn't have a single bad frame out of it. I didn't have any issues with it at all. Works great with a rollback. I agree with you. It folds up and fits, very politely in your camera bag when if you're like hiking around. And I took it out into some crazy inhospitable places, like on some crazy hikes where, you wouldn't think that you would take a folding camera from the 1930s into places like I was taking this one. Felt totally comfortable doing it, dead reliable. And it's a cool camera. It is a really cool camera that doesn't get a lot of props, and it should, because it does a good job.
No, I love them. I unfortunately, the one that I shot for my review had a bunch of light leaks. So I want to get a chance to shoot another one again, because I do see the appeal. They are very cool. I made that comment of not knowing how to hold them because mine didn't have the grip. I think that would help a lot.
Yeah. And what about you, Mike?
So I'll have two. To be honest with you, a camera. I'll do two surprises that I didn't think I would like as much as I did. So I think this one very well, Theo, could give your beloved Mamiya 7 a run for its money. I think that this camera.
I'll say no already.
Hold on. There's one advantage that this one has that yours does not, and it's that it folds. So this is called the Fujifilm GF670 Professional. This camera was it was rebranded as a Voigtlander Vito 3, I think, or Vito 4. There was a Voigtlander version of this. I don't remember what it's exactly called, but it can do both 6x6 and 6x7. The viewfinder is absolutely glorious. I mean, it is crystal clear, and it's got auto parallax correction frame lines. It's got auto field correction. It tells you in the viewfinder whether you're in 6x6 or 6x7 mode. The rangefinder patch is very large. I mean, in terms of the size of the rangefinder patch and the clarity, it's easily on Leica M8, M11, M12, whatever, M10. Very, very sharp, very clear. The lens on this, the Fuji non-EBC lens, is very good.
But it's only got one lens.
Only one lens. You're right. It's a fixed lens, but the ability to fold it shut, and when you fold it shut,
it's handy.
It's a little thicker, Anthony, than like a Kodak monitor would be, but pretty close. To get a really high quality 6x7 camera that could fit in a large coat pocket or a medium sized handbag, I think is very special. So I kind of saw this as that's another folding rangefinder. But I was impressed, and it has full auto exposure. I mean, you could shoot it in manual mode if you want, but it does have AE, which is kind of cool. But one other camera that I did not know what to expect at all going into it that I really, really like. This was my surprise of the year. It's a digital camera, is the Epson RD1. So this is a digital rangefinder. So it's an actual digital camera in the body of like it's a Cosina built body. So it's very similar to the R2 series. It uses the Leica M mount. So I have on it a Summilux M35 1.4. The viewfinder, just like the Fuji I just put down, is super clear, very, very bright, excellent high contrast viewfinder. But what's really cool about this camera is, and I want to get to this in a minute here too. I want to really quick recover some of the questions people have been asking us in the Discord. But people are always talking about making these digital backs for analog cameras. Like they want to shoot digital photos with an analog camera, and it just never works. Like no one has been able to it's hard to if the appeal is to have the fun of an analog camera but still get digital images, that's really difficult to do. But this camera does that. It has a film advance lever. It doesn't advance the film because there's no film, but this is how you manually cock the shutter. So you still have to wind the lever to set the shutter. So it full digital camera. So pressing the shutter release doesn't do anything. You have to keep winding it. On a Leica body where it has the rewind knob here on the side, there's no film. This is actually the mode dial. So you get like these nice clicks. You probably can't hear that, but you can control all the menu functions on this analog needle, which is on top of the body. Epson, when they made this camera, or I think they still are, they're owned by Seiko, the watchmaker, shutter maker. And this is an actual Seiko watch movement that they repurposed. And you get 4 needles. One of them shows your exposures, how many are remaining on the memory card. There's a smaller needle for normal, high, and raw. So your quality level. You get an E and an F, like a gas gauge, which is your battery level. And then you have a white balance meter, which is auto. And then there's 5 little icons for different types of lighting scenarios that you can control with this analog meter. So, I mean, even though it does have it's a 2006 digital camera, so it has a relatively small rear LCD, you don't need to use it at all. And this is one of the earlier models. The final revision of this camera, they actually remove this ability. But this one, you can swing out the rear LCD and fold it shut and completely hide it. So, if you want a analog experience, but in a digital camera, this is it. It uses Leica film lenses. It has a film advance lever, shuttercock, whatever. It has an analog dial for controlling all the modes. Even the mode control dial is using the little wheel on the side, which looks like the rewind knob. And I don't know the technology behind it, but Paul, when this camera was new, I believe people raved about the image quality. Some kind of sensor. This is a CCD. It's a 6.1 megapixel. The image quality I got out of it was fantastic. Leaps and bounds better than any other 6 megapixel camera of the day.
And it's like an M mount.
Yeah. So you get the best lenses money can buy. You get the absolute most you can get out of the 6 megapixel sensor. It's a very well sturdy built camera. I mean, it feels like a quality, even though it's made by Cucina. For me, it's not about the megapixels. It's not about the Leica lore that sometimes people get irritated with. I just like cameras that are fun and interesting to use. And if they make great images, that's a bonus. But this, without a doubt, does all 3. And I was aware that these cameras existed. I had never seen one before, but when I actually got a chance to use one, this, in my mind, of any of the cameras I've ever shot, reviewed, whatever, is the most perfect balance of analog and digital I think that's ever been made. More even than like the M8, M9, because those do still have the optical rangefinders. But still digital. So that was my surprise of the year. I did not expect to kind of fall for that camera like I did. Looks like we lost Anthony, which you told us could happen, but at least we got his chance to talk. Let's wind down here. We didn't know how long we were going to do this. We've been recording for an hour and 45 minutes now. One thing I do want to do though, real quick, for one, for those of you listening, I'll speak for Paul and Theo here, but I've been really impressed with the engagement on the Discord. We were told that was a good way to reach out to people, that there was a segment of listeners that preferred that over Facebook. And we kind of just said, all right, you guys want a Discord server? We made a Discord server, right? And I check that thing daily. Paul, I've seen on there quite a bit, answering a lot of people. We have the gas forum. People are sharing their pickups, and people are commenting on some of the episodes. The lounge has had a lot of engagement. So for one, I wanted to say thank you to those of you who've been in there too. But we do have the Ask the Host section. And the intent with that is, like, if you don't want to join us on one of the shows, but have a question for one of us and want us to talk about something, that's kind of where I think it's, we do we even get emails anymore, Theo, through the Gmail account? I don't think we do.
Oh, we do lots, but most of them are
spam,
what they call phishing.
Yeah. I think back in the day, podcasts used to solicit feedback a lot through email, and I don't know that that's the most effective way anymore.
About that.
but I think this is a really cool way for people, if you don't want to make it to the show, or you just can't due to time zones or whatever, maybe you just hate the sound of your own voice. I don't blame you. But if you have any questions, so real quick, I'll just go through this real quick, and if you guys have anything you want to throw in. Somebody, Mig, asked if the Koa, Paul, you were talking about the adapters for the Koa mount, and he wanted to know if the SCT R2 body would work with SCT R lenses. I responded that I believe that all the Kowa interchangeable SLRs use the same mount, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So there was the SER, which did not have TTL metering. It had an external CDS sensor. Then there was the SETR and the SETR2, which was the final version. So all three
lenses were all the same.
And they're great, optically fantastic.
Well, what happened was the Cine people have found them.
Yeah.
That's why the prices have gone up so much on them.
Yeah.
But the adapters are very cool. They're not cheap. They're about $85 for the adapter. But because the lens does not have an f-stop ring.
Right. It's just like the DKL mount.
And it's not an SLR. So you it's an SLR, but you don't have any focusing.
Right.
So the adapter has a helicoid on it, which allows you to focus closer.
All right. Brian McDomal, we talked about this in the point and shoot episode, raved about the Shinon, what was it, the 3001, and somebody named PTR asked about getting one. Any thoughts? I said they were overpriced. But Paul, wasn't there a Kodak S?
You came up with it.
I looked it up.
1000X or something. It is absolutely the same camera.
Yep, same camera. It looks different and it's uglier.
Around $79.
Yep.
The most expensive one I saw was $79.
Yeah.
Most of them are in the $40 price range.
Whereas the Shinons are $300-400.
Yeah, and the cool thing about them is they're multi-beam autofocus.
Right.
They were the first multi-beam, and I think there were 28 zones of focus, which is a lot for a camera of that.
For any camera, let alone a point and shoot.
Yes.
I mean, really, that's crazy. Oh, and speaking, he left. I didn't get a chance to ask him, but in our private chat just the other day, Anthony commented on he eBay searched for that Fuji Natura, and he was like, "Holy crap, that's expensive."
Caused him to swallow his gum, I believe.
Gosh, I feel like there was one or two other questions in here. Someone asked about Skip Williams asked about the Contex S2, which we kind of talked about a little bit too. Anthony mentioned it's like a Nikon FM sort of manual everything, but uses great lenses, great build quality. And then somebody asked about, it was Mig again asked about the that's what it's the I'm back. This is the part of this hobby that never seems to go away. Right. These capsule attempts to recreate, and that's I was alluding to that when I was talking about the Epson. But the I'm back. I will give a tiny bit of credit to the people creating this. That this one does look mildly more interesting than the previous version of the I'm back, which was a sensor that was mounted under the camera, and then there was like a light tube with a mirror or a prism that reflected the light onto the film plane. So you were essentially taking a picture of a ground glass on the film plane in an SLR, which is just absurd to me. But it looks like it's like a plastic module that's roughly the same shape as a 35mm cassette of film. And I assume that's where the brains are. But then sticking out of the side of it is like literally a digital sensor that's completely exposed to dust. And I feel like if I had one of these, my OCD would go through the roof of, you're just conditioned to not touch. Don't even look at the digital sensors because they're so sensitive to dust. But this thing, the sensor's just kind of flapping in the wind. And so essentially you're putting this very thin digital sensor onto the film plane. So you're in essence putting it where the film plane would be. It is a crop sensor. So it's APS-C. So you have to do with crop factor. But what I don't understand, and it's only because I've just not researched it, is on a film camera, you wind the shutter, the film release, you press the shutter release, the shutter opens, it closes really quickly. But how do you synchronize the digital sensor to capture the image at the exact moment the shutter is open? I have to imagine it's doing like video, right? Like
it's always running.
It's always running, and it only saves the image of when the shutter happens to be open, right?
Yeah, I just can't visualize it either.
I can't either. And I don't, and let's just put that aside. Let's pretend they figured out the perfect way to make that work. Is that really recreating the feel of a film analog camera, but shooting it? I mean, like, what are you gaining from that?
I'm sorry. I have to voice. I totally think this is such a waste of time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We've probably got thousands of people going to write into that defunct email address now. But the point is, why? If you want to
Yeah.
shoot film, shoot film. If you want to shoot digital camera, use all the advancements that we've gotten through,
Yeah.
getting film, digital cameras, or buy the RD1, invest in the RD1. That's a good mix, but it was designed around taking digital pictures, the RD1. That's the difference. Yes,
Yeah.
okay, they added a shutter clocking for some reason, and all that sort of stuff. And it makes you feel like you're shooting a manual camera. But there's a reason why we've advanced onto digital cameras and why everybody uses them and why most people use a phone these days. They're convenient and they turn out good quality pictures. So if your aim is to get a good quality picture, don't try and use a film camera to create a digital picture
Yeah. I
apart
agree.
from shooting film and scanning it in.
And and again, I haven't seen any sample images from this newest version, but all the previous ones looked god awful, like
Yeah.
really bad. Worse than even what are those? You can go on Amazon now and get like it's called a Minolta digital camera, but it's like a Chinese, fixed focus. It's got an LED for a flash. I mean, even that I have to imagine makes better images than some of these early versions of the IMAX. So well, I understand this segment of our hobby is not going to go away. If film emulsions keep getting more expensive and more companies are discontinuing them, this is only going to continue to be possible, or I'm sorry, popular. But like you, Theo, I don't get it. I've never once had a desire to turn my Nikon F2 or whatever into a digital camera. I love digital. That is one thing I think is true about all four of us. Most of the people who like this show, we are not film snobs. Yes, we overwhelmingly talk about film over digital, but I like digital. I have a ton of great digital cameras. I raved about the Epson. I love the Micro Four Thirds, the OMD. I love my Nikon Z5. I shoot more digital than I do film. Even though it doesn't seem like I do. I shoot more digital, but there's different reasons to shoot film, different reasons to shoot digital, and you don't have to choose. I get it.
Exactly.
Into
I'll invest in a GFX one day because that's what I see as probably the equivalent of the Mamiya 7 in the digital world. And that's my thinking and that's what I like. And I can actually adapt my lenses from the Mamiya 7 to them because they've got these fancy adapters that do it. So I can still take advantage of that. But there's no way I would try and turn the Mamiya 7 into a digital camera. It just doesn't make sense to me.
So that, I think, is our thoughts, Meg, or whoever was wondering. But I want to encourage, Caver, this was December 8th, so it's kind of an old question, but it was directed at you, Theo, asking about Leica repairs in Australia, or where did we land on that?
Look, there's a couple of companies in Queensland. I don't have them off the top of my head. I haven't sent any Leicas here in Australia to be repaired.
Okay.
I trust Jess. She does a great job on everything that I've sent her way. So that would work with me as well. Albeit if you're getting a very expensive Leica fixed, there's no reason why you wouldn't spend the extra bit in shipping and ship it to the US and get is it Yung Yi and
Yushin Yi.
Yushi and the other one
Don
that does that's
Jag.
the ones. Yeah, get them to do it.
Yushin has my Hector, the Lights Hector 2.5 that I had someone else look at and they couldn't get it open. So I'm really hoping he can get the haze out of that one. And then Alan has my Yashica YF, which needs a total curtain replacement. So I'm eager to see that one because that's a little bit more than a CLA does. But I would agree.
Doesn't Leica themselves still
they do
fix their old cameras? So I mean that's another option too, and then you get a really good warranty with it too.
Yeah. Plus, I have to imagine if you are then going to resell it, being able to say this was serviced at the factory, that's going to give you a little bit more panache.
Yeah, it depends what the camera's worth,
right?
I mean,
yep.
That's
all right. So again, really awesome to see the engagement. By no means are we abandoning Facebook. I'm not going to go away from there. We still have, we're getting close to 1,000 members on our Facebook page. I do like the Discord. I love what I've liked about Discord the most, I think, is even right here, I was able to just scroll back and find questions from early December. Facebook, you can't do that. Once a thread disappears, sometimes finding stuff, I can't. I've been using Facebook for over a decade, and I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to refer back to a previous discussion, and finding stuff is really, really difficult because of their algorithms and the way it prioritizes stuff. So, and then no ads. There's no ads on Discord. And so if you haven't been on the Discord yet, definitely check it out. If you have questions for us, you can, by all means, you could ask them on Facebook, but we have the dedicated forum in Discord called Ask the Hosts. We have the lounge, which is just kind of anything. If you want to share your pictures, we kind of contemplated maybe adding a buy sell trade. I don't know if I want to get into that at this point. Maybe we'll add that later. Who knows? But this was fun doing this. Just sort of, we really enjoy the episodes where the listeners come in, but the guys and I said, hey, maybe we should just do a kind of spontaneous show with just us and just talk about what we've been doing lately. So I don't know about you guys, but I had fun.
Yeah, it was a good evening.
It was great fun.
Yeah.
It was really good fun.
So still nothing really planned for the next show. We've tossed around a few ideas for what our next episode is going to be about. Somebody had pointed out that we haven't really dedicated anything to, what brand? I thought I wrote it down, but I guess I didn't. What brands haven't we covered dedicated to? We did. We've done Konica. Olympus. It was Olympus.
That's right. It was Olympus. Yeah.
Olympus. Somebody said you guys have never done Olympus episodes. So I have a feeling that's probably where we'll lean. We definitely want to do large format because that is something that a couple episodes, a few people jumped in and had some really great things to share. So that I would feel like that's a safe bet for one of the next few episodes, but we'll get the announcement.
We're going to have to sell tickets for the King regular show though.
Yeah.
It's going to be limited audience for that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys, like guys. I said, Anthony dropped off. Theo, Happy New Year. It's still a little early. Paul, Happy New Year. I'm going to release this with practically no edits. I'll slap on an intro and get this out maybe by tomorrow. So people, I'm not even going to do show notes. I'm just.
Nope. And I'll tell you, I will bet that this will be one of the most popular episodes
probably will
we've ever done.
Hey, if it does. And, if this ends up being successful, that's no skin off my shoulders because it's a hell of a lot less work we'll have to put into all the editing and stuff.
All right, guys.
Brutal, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Happy New Year, buddy.
Okay, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Okay.